Feels better already. Okay. So, I think it's the next one. I think that's where we stopped last week. Yeah. That's where I want to. Yeah. Cheers. Yes, so we've been going through this profound teaching on the 7-point mind training, which is sort of like jumping into the deep end of the pool. Welcome. Hope you can swim. But anyways, we can have, please, if you wish, anybody wish to ask questions or clarification, if we go along, please do. So these verses by Geshe Chökyi, and that he then made publicly available, whereas they'd been passed on in secret previously to those whose minds were ready. So we're talking about, training here in the 3 scopes, or the small scope, which is aiming to practice an ethical life and so forth, to, on the basis of having taken refuge, to ensure or do our best to ensure a best possible rebirth. In other words, as we are here as humans, we've created the conditions for the best possible rebirth in past lives. In other words, we've had all the conditions to come together and meet the Dharma and have an interest to understand and practice. And all the conditions for that include having made stainless prayers, pure prayers in the past with a pure motivation, having practiced pure ethics, probably in the context of having taken vows, because it makes it more powerful. So whatever vows in past lives we've taken, whatever vows this life. And, the practice of generosity and so forth. So here we're being the recipients of all of that past hard work from past lives, let alone what we're doing in this current life. So we're up to then the middle scope, which is the wish to go even further and say, I'm done with suffering. Of course, we can all say we're done with suffering. Nobody wants to suffer. It's no great revelation there. But that understanding that being born in the conditions where our sort of out of control mind is the one who creates suffering for us, that we call samsara, is that sort of an existence. And so the wish to be free of any existence in any realm of existence that is going to lead to that. So to be free of suffering, on the understanding of the causes of that are our own afflicted states of mind and negative karma from past lives that we're carrying along that we haven't yet purified. Okay. So here, moving on from last time, we're looking at transforming adverse circumstances into the path to enlightenment. In other words, all the things that go bad, not seeing them as a punishment, not seeing them as negative, although that's our tendency, isn't it? But to see them as opportunities to grow. So when I was studying many years ago, small group communications, I think it was called, within another course I was doing. And that's where I encountered the idea of storming when a group of people comes together. Not this group, obviously. You're in the performance at the end of the 4 things. But storming is where, people come together newly and they, have conflicts or disagreements, different views, and we have to go through that to get to a point of norming, to agree on those values, and then being able to sort of take that forward. and actually perform and be, And so this is what we're saying, that those adverse circumstances, those difficulties get us, to be able to move forward, to be able to put our Dharma into practice, because we're given so many opportunities. Just look at the world of how many difficulties, problems, conflicts. Yesterday was the International Day for Peace, right? When I think about, Jeremy Gilly having this one huge but simple vision of having one day in the world where there was no fighting, put down their guns, there was no conflict anywhere. So it was 1999. Just one day. So then he took it to the UN and got adopted. Hasn't happened yet. Like, just one day of the year can we do this? Hasn't happened yet, has it? And yet we know that peace is possible. As the Dalai Lama says, peace in the world starts with peace in our mind. So that's what we're working on here, our own mind. His Holiness also said, if all children learnt meditation at an early age, within one generation we'd have world peace. So it's achievable, but we can't imagine it, can we, within one generation? Or maybe you can. But it is possible. Because a peaceful mind doesn't create disharmony, doesn't create conflict, doesn't rub up the wrong way. And on top of that, having these profound Lojong teachings, where we're talking from the great scope, which is a wish to become a Buddha, to benefit all sentient beings, and having, the whole point of transforming the mind is transforming it from being just worried about myself, everything about me, to thinking, what can I do to benefit others? How can I use my life? How can I use those sufferings to turn that around to benefit others? So it's what we're going through here. So this one's in relation to the middle scope, seeking our own individual liberation, had enough of samsara, want to get out of it. And so there's two advices here about how we train in that. And one is using suffering to train in renunciation. The mind of definitely wanting to be done with the suffering existences. The mind saying, we call it the mind of definite emergent, wanting to definitely emerge, be out of samsara, out of suffering, and into the opposite, nirvana, bliss, which is a peace of mind that is continuous. So the possibility of that, first we have to entertain, and then to wish to go towards it. I'm still on there.
17.
Yeah, I'm still there. Rest all day. That's okay. So one is to train in renunciation. And renunciation is that. It's not giving away all your possessions, although those of us who are ordained then go through a process of decluttering. And I think spring cleaning, I need to do more decluttering. It's scary how quickly it all sort of comes in, isn't it? Like, how does that get there? Well, the only person responsible is me. So training in renunciation and training in using suffering to overcome arrogance, pride, based on this grasping at a self and then cherish yourself, cherishing mind that just does everything to look after me and mine. My family, my Dharma community, my state, say my Western Australia. Oh my gosh, it's nearly 2 years and now I'm almost talking like a West Australian. That's a bit scary, isn't it? A little bit scary. Don't worry. In Queensland, they say you have to have 20 years there, so I was never there for 20 years. I don't know what they say here. But overcoming that arrogance, it's all about me and me and mine. Okay, next one. So going through the first one, using suffering to train in renunciation. So throughout this, we've been quoting a lot from Lama Zopa Rinpoche's Transforming Problems into Happiness, which Rinpoche taught, possibly here, those who were here in 2006. I think Rinpoche was doing a whole tour around Australia teaching on this book. I don't know if he took that here. Not that he did. Anyway, that was the theme of the tour. So, as Rinpoche says, mix. That's it. Mix the problem you are experiencing with the Dharma. So, in other words, put our Dharma glasses on, and through that lens, see the problem from, well, what does the Buddha say about problems, difficulties, illnesses, and so forth? With a Mahayana thought transformation, thinking that suffering is the very nature of samsara, in other words, the sort of existence we're living, where in the Buddha's first teaching, the Four Noble Truths, in other words, the Four Truths for noble Arya beings, those who have a direct perceptual realization of reality, who say, yep, life is in the nature of suffering. If we don't believe it, how's your body feeling right now? Completely pain-free. I rejoice. The rest of us, we know about suffering. Okay, and not just the body. So we think that, as the Buddha said, we look at that first noble truth that says the truth of suffering, that looks at the fact that no matter, at the most subtle level, no matter where we're born, no matter what, wonderful conditions that we might have, this existence is in the nature of suffering. And it's interesting because you say, yeah, but I'm pretty happy today. Yes, but does it last? That's the whole point. So we want to aim for the lasting, bliss at this level, bliss of nirvana, where we're in ultimate bliss and peace, always, 24/7. Haven't quite got there yet. So thinking that something is the very nature of samsara causes the thought of renunciation of samsara to develop, causes this thought of, I've had enough. Thank you. I want out of here. So, as Pabonka Rinpoche says in the Liberating the Palm of Your Hands, if your house was flooded, you'd want to find, the root cause for that problem, like where is it, and put a stop to it immediately, wouldn't you? You wouldn't just be, oh, well, the house is flooded. And we've seen that with a lot of floods over east and so forth. And so, just so with our experience of suffering now, we want to abandon the causes for that. What are the causes? Okay. The afflicted states of mind and the past negative karma, which we can purify. We don't have to keep letting it weigh on our mind and cause regrettable actions and speech. So to abandon that is to train our mind, to subdue our mind, and to purify negative karma we've accumulated. Even we can't even remember last week, let alone past lives. We can just check our mind now. And okay, so at the same time, building up our accumulation of virtue. So we talk about the accumulation of virtue being all the positive states of mind, our positive motivations to benefit others. May everything I think, do, and say today benefit others. And then we, remind ourselves throughout the day, may it be of benefit to others. And already having that mindset. I remember Geshe Sultran being asked a question at Chenrezig Institute about when you've taken bodhisattva vows, can you take a nap during the day? Because it's sort of, there is something there about not, we know the one about not stretching the legs. And I thought, when I first heard that, I thought, I like stretching my legs. It means don't be lazily just loll about. But if you set your bodhicitta motivation, like we did at the beginning of this teaching, and then, it's there in your mind, then you have a good nap with bodhicitta. You don't have to think about that. It's not being selfish. You need to refresh yourself. or you need to have a nap, or whatever it is. So then we can think, that's okay. Everything's being done with bodhicitta. Isn't that amazing? Just by setting my motivation to be of benefit to others. So that way we can train our mind to accumulate more those positive states, and for our mind to be more and more coming from a virtuous place. And you know, as Lama Zopa says, by renouncing samsara, say, enough already, you mix your deluded mind, like our mind of all our ratty afflictions and so forth, our disturbed states of mind. You mix that with virtue by thinking about that in the context of Dharma, where whatever our understanding of the Dharma teachings, the Dharma practice. Okay. All right, then the next one. Continuing on, so this is a quote from Thubten Jigme Tempe Nyima, what's his name? Dzogchen Rinpoche. As long as we are in samsara, we are never independent or truly free or in control of our lives. Why? Because we're not in control of our minds. So as long as we're experiencing a disturbed state of mind, then we are not in control of our lives. And the untrained mind just follows whatever pops into our mind, just watch it. And then we act accordingly. We don't check up. Hang on a minute. That's crazy thinking. On the contrary, we are always dependent on and at the mercy of suffering. So we must eliminate the enemy that destroys anything that is wholesome and good, which is arrogance and pride. So again, it's about the self-cherishing ego, destroys anything that is wholesome and good. Now, I was always very fascinated. A friend of mine, he said he would always end a relationship while it was still good before it went bad. Now, I think for the past 30 years, he hasn't been in a relationship. So maybe that's not the way to go. It's sort of like, no, you use the problem as opportunities to deepen your relationship. You know, I read some research that had been done on long-term relationships, couples being together for a minimum of 15 years. So that was 15 years regarded long-term. So just to say what long-term is by that study. And it was all about acceptance. It wasn't about having to agree with the other one, but accepting the different points of view, the different interests and so forth. And that being the basis of, you know, a good relationship. Now, you can tell me better than I can tell you the basis of a good relationship. But maybe I want you to tell me, because we have this thing coming up, Dharma in daily life, and I'm on a panel with 2 other ordained Sangha, and we're talking about relationships. And just like, oh, that's funny. They must have thought it was funny getting the monastics to talk about relationships. Yes, we need help. Okay. So we must eliminate the enemy that destroys anything that is wholesome and good. So we normally look at the enemy as being someone, something out there. However, all the Buddhist teachings say, well, the enemy, check up the enemy within. It's all our afflicted states of mind, but this specifically, you know, pulls out arrogance and pride, where we put ourselves higher than others. And we must do away with the evil attitude of belittling others and considering them as inferior. So we use this to reflect on what are our own insecurities. Anyone who's truly free of arrogance or pride, who has true humility, doesn't belittle others, doesn't criticize others, doesn't put them down. In fact, the Dalai Lama says that whenever he meets anyone, he greets them as a friend. He says as a long-lost friend, a long-time friend, that idea. Or Richard Gere saying, everyone he meets, his first thought, may you be well, may you be happy. So it's coming from a place of humility and acceptance, right? And those of us who've taken bodhisattva vows, the very first bodhisattva downfall, I always figure whatever comes first must be the most important, just like the first teaching of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths, first teaching. So it must be the most important. Anyway, that's how my mind works. In the newspaper, we still haven't, anyway, we talked about that before. But in the news, they would say, journalists, put the most important point in the first paragraph or the first sentence, or in the headline, because people will only read that bit. Anyway, it's like that. So the first of the bodhisattva downfalls is praising myself and belittling others. That is going against our motivation to be a benefit to others. So then we have to think, when our mind goes towards belittling others, at least catch it in the mind before it comes out the mouth. And then we cause disharmony, especially if other people start agreeing, we cause disturbance to their mind. Just think about anything that disturbs our mind. If we let it out, then it's disturbance to others. And that's a great cause of conflict and disharmony. So to think anytime I want to criticize others, belittle others, zip the lip. And then work on the mind. We're not saying this training is easy, by the way. That's why it was passed on in secret. It's quite challenging. But the harder the challenge, the more we meet that challenge, the more powerful our mind becomes. So we get to choose. Okay, next one. So then that's the middle scope. The two trainings related to the great scope in relation to transforming suffering into the past. So this isn't the whole extent of the trainings that we do on each level. Using suffering to train in compassion and using suffering to cherish others more than yourself, having that orientation out to others. Next one. So the first one, using suffering to train in compassion. So think, just as I want happiness and do not want suffering, everyone else also wants happiness and does not want suffering. When we say everyone else, we're actually including all the animals, which includes all the insects. I'm not quite sure why we separate them out. They're all in the animal realm. Insects, like the little, put some compost in this morning, and then those midges, those teeny tiny little, maybe they were baby fruit flies, I'm not sure yet. Midges. And I think, they don't want to suffer, just like I don't want to suffer. So any being we encounter, we can train our mind thinking like that. So when we do Guru Puja here, all these steps there's always verses for all of these steps. So this one, yeah. So in generating compassion, the foundation of the Mahayana path, having considered how all these miserable beings, now we're not saying they're hopeless, we're saying they're helpless, miserable in the context of suffering beings, those miserable beings. That could bring arrogance. It's not meaning that. Anyway, this is how it's translated. Those beings living in misery have been my mothers. So here we have to have that on the foundation of accepting past and future lives on the basis of our mental continuum passing on from one life to the next to the next. It's not like everything stops when you die. Body stops, but the subtle level of mind continues on with all the karmic imprints, with all our tendencies and so forth. And then whatever future life we have, that's still, propelling our existence, still on the mind stream. And so then we say, well, in each of those lives, I must have had a mother. I must have had, when I was an ant, I had a mummy ant. When I was a chook, an elephant, a mummy elephant. Just like now, being a human. And so I think generally in this life, most of us know who our birth mother was, and other people have the right to find out if they didn't know, and feel a need to find out, isn't it? So we do feel very close to that birth mother, however we were raised, and have raised me with kindness again and again. So this is where the 7-point cause and effect of realizing that the kindness of the mother of this life, and contemplating then, well, in all my past lives, similarly, I had a mother who cared for me, or at least, gave birth to me at the minimum, which enabled me to do all the things in this life. But, many of us had a mother who cared for us, taught us how to walk, talk, gave us food, gave us nourishment from within the womb till till we left home. Maybe if she's still alive, still giving you nourishment. And I whenever, my mother was alive and I go back to visit, the first thing she'd say is, those who know me, it won't be any surprise, cup of tea. And she'd always had something, some refreshments to offer. That would be her first point of call when you're coming in. So just that level of kindness, of unconditional love and so forth. I seek your blessings to develop effortless compassion, like spontaneous compassion that can't bear to see the suffering, like that of a loving mother for her precious child. So this then, a verse like that becomes a basis of, or is based on Arya Asanga's 7-point cause and effect, how we generate this mind of compassion of bodhicitta. First of all, seeing fact of, well, all beings have been my mother, so in that way we can see them as equal. And when they haven't been my mother, how they've helped me. Like we think about all the beings who've contributed to my clothing, if I track back to, I think it's cotton. I think this one's cotton. Well, sometimes they're not, but there's a bit of poly stuff. There's a lot of poly stuff these days. I think this one's cotton. So then you think of cotton growing in the fields, and you think of the insects who lost their lives, and you think of the people harvesting, and then you think of, that being people who trucked it to the factory, so it got made into cloth, and then the people who sewed it, and et cetera, and you just think, wow, there's a lot of beings involved in just that one thing. And we deep alone. So there's that, and then there's the cotton reels, and then the person who sewed it. Yeah, everything. So we did, that how dependent I am on all these beings. And I seek your blessings to develop effortless compassion for them, like that of a loving mother for her precious child. It said her only child, so how much love she would give. But even as my mother, having multiple children, then equal in treating us equally. So that becomes the basis of immeasurable equanimity. And recognizing the kindness of the mother, all beings have been our mother, wishing to repay their kindness, and generating love, as in seeing them as close. If we think, oh, that's a snake, oh, that's a cockroach, or whatever, we don't, of course, see them as close. I'm not talking about when you're in a state of danger and really survival kicks in, but seeing them as pleasant on the basis of the fact that they don't want to suffer. They want to be happy. And they have shown me great kindness, probably in many lives. And through that, and seeing the ways in which other beings suffer and not wishing for that. So here we have every access to that, news feeds and so forth, where it's exactly that. We hear about people's suffering and beings suffering on a daily basis. And so we can use that to generate compassion for them. And on that basis, we develop great compassion, because it's not just, oh, I feel sorry for my family and my children and so forth. It's like, oh, we're all in the same boat, no matter what body we're in. And so we generate great compassion that is more enduring than just the crisis compassion that says, oh, yes, look what's happening in Ukraine. And even it's been going on nearly 2 years. Quite tragic. Coming up for it's in the second year and not seeming to abate. And not just them, the Russians as well, and the Belarusians and the Polish, and everyone affected. Basically, the whole world's affected, especially when I look at the petrol prices and they say it's because of the war in Ukraine. How does that work? It's interdependence, you see. And so to develop on the Bodhisattva path, and this training is definitely that, of this orientation. How can I be of best benefit to others? So we take on that sense of, as the Dalai Lama says, universal responsibility, which means responsibility for all sentient beings. And your poor mind gets overwhelmed by all sentient beings, and you think, well, may I just be as benefit to as many as I can? Yeah.
In that Bodhisattva attitude, I'm just wondering, okay, I don't know if it's a question.
Go for it.
So the Eightfold Path is the way to some of these things.
Yeah.
I used to be in child protection. I used to live in the room.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just wondering about this, the place of like surgeons in that process.
Yeah.
A certain bishop who's just been.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Damaging.
Yeah. Yeah.
So does that mean that? Yeah, I'm just wondering about perhaps. But I'm just wondering about my reaction. You know, is it an insecurity if I have a reaction? Perhaps maybe that individual is on this trend. Second, perhaps in some ways, those people, such as that person without inferior, but some such person has then been protected or taken to the care of a certain faith at the cost of the children.
Yeah, so also in the Bodhisattva vows, we have this theme of, if you can prevent others from creating a negativity, we do that. And you're not saying that because presumably you're not in a position to have prevented him from doing what he's doing. But you're on the maybe receiving end with child protection.
But if you bred him a long-lost friend.
Yeah, we have to look at it as what we mean by, that's where it sits more comfortably, Richard Gere saying, may you be well, may you be happy. Because if you think if that being was well and happy, they wouldn't be that perpetrator. So we can have compassion for them as not condoning anything, but compassion that is a very disturbed state of mind, right? That's a toxic state of mind. And that the actions are not, so we don't become a doormat. The actions are not, well, they break the law, but they're very damaging to others. So where we can intervene, we do. Now, if we were a Buddha, we'd know exactly what to do. We have the story of like the 500 on the ship where, the ship's captain was going to kill the other 500. And it was a trading ship and, take all the goods for himself. And the Buddha happened to be on the ship. out of his clairvoyance, could see that intention and killed that captain to prevent that captain from creating negativity, but also preventing the others, 499, being killed. Now, in the state of law, you go to prison. And, in a court of law, you go to prison. And so taking that risk to say, karmically, I'll look at it that way, which is looking at, many multiple lives. Now, if I think in the context, bring it back to this bishop, of course, if there's any way that, any possibility or any way that we're able to advocate for those children or so forth, we would do that. And this is where I saw, and when the linked cafe situation in Sydney, and Heron Manos, and where he had everyone hostage there, and then 2 of the hostages died. And when I was going to interfaith events afterwards, I'd say, let's pray for the 2 people who died. And I'm like, hang on, 3 people died because he was shot. But we can't say, I'm not going to pray for him, because it's a win-win situation. If we pray for him to have peace of mind and, to have compassion and so forth, may the heart of compassion develop, then that would be a win-win, wouldn't it? I mean, obviously he was dead in terms of this life, but in terms of that being going forward, because with an understanding of karma, and an understanding of karma of this pedophile bishop, we can think, might have suffered a sick mind in this life, might go to prison, certainly has public shaming, but just wait till next life. If he doesn't purify that, if he doesn't atone for that and make amends and so forth. And so in the Buddhist context, something like sexual abuse, and particularly for minor, it gets heavier, negative karma gets heavier depending on the object, in other words, who you did this to, how often you did, the frequency, how heavy the negativity was in your mind, all sorts of things. So you will be reborn in the most suffering of hells. It's seen as it's not killing, but it's seen under the precept of, downfall, of breaking the precept of killing. And then you've got to say, and on top of that, him as a figure of a bishop makes it even heavier, because he's taken certain vows, right? So there's so many different things that play out into that. Meanwhile, we don't just, if we can do something to be of benefit to those children, to their families, to the community, we do, right? But at least, we may be able to put something on social media, not condemning his actions, but, just, I don't know, in some way, maybe calling the church system to account that has protected him. I don't know the full story, but I did see the headline. And there's so many, many different cases. When I was in Queensland and doing interfaith work, and this bishop had, Anglican bishop, had just been appointed in Brisbane. And so his, what do you call it? Diocese was from Brisbane up to Bundaberg. So that's quite a distance. And he called himself a baby bishop, because in their first year they're called baby bishops. It's so cute. But he said, it's so hard for me because he had the legacy of that sort of behaviour there. And his role was trying to reach out to community and try and build a sense of trust after all of, whatever damage had been done there. So I think, I also use this to remind me this is definitely a time of degeneration, when people of faith, so-called, are are not, holding their vows. And not only that, they're going against the law. I mean, for all of us, of course, the bottom line is you uphold the laws of the land. So these days you wouldn't be like, if you're a Buddha, you wouldn't be going around killing people. I mean, it's interesting, that story, and I think, did that really happen? Of the Buddha. I mean, it's told many times, right? Maybe it did, anyway. So we have these dilemmas and when we do a training in holding others as close, having affection towards them, we start with those who are already dear to us. So we already have some capacity for that. The too hard basket would be the bishop in this case. So let's just start with those who are already close to us, those who are, and then we get better at that, those who maybe we pass every day, but we don't pay attention to them, including all the animals, the insects, and so forth. Lama Zopa Rinpoche stops and does pujas for every ant, but maybe we don't have to, sorry, Rinpoche, be quite as like that. Quite as thorough. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And so then we form a connection with those beings, and we build up our capacity to extend that further and further. And even out of the wrongdoers, maybe there's someone in our life is causing us a little bit of irritation. We start with them. So we build up our capacity for that. We don't go straight to the too hard basket, because it's just like, and we also, where does it start? Compassion to ourselves. Start with that, or the affectionate love, or compassion to ourselves. Already that could be the most confronting part of the whole practice, so stick with that. So yeah, so that's why this is a massive training. So we just start where we're at and gradually increase our capacity. So when world leaders do wrong, or people in a position of authority do wrong, and I have to say it appears to be increasing in the world, or maybe the reporting of it's increasing, not sure, then we see this is really unethical times. So for me, all the more reason to be more, hold my vows purely and practice ethics myself, because already that's profoundly out of sync with what we see going around us, what we hear in the media. Sounds a bit bleak, doesn't it? But that's the reality we live in. So our practice, whatever practice, then becomes incredibly powerful. And it's okay, don't beat yourself up for not being able to be immediately, embracing, metaphorically, please, the bishop into your circle of love. It's reality, and we have to acknowledge it.
I was just thinking, in terms of the bishop, if you couldn't see him as a long lost friend, then maybe you could really see him as a fellow human being.
Yeah. Yes. And the fact that, if and when he goes to prison, he's, what do they call them? Rock lobsters, I think. No. Rock lobsters a song, isn't it? Rock spiders. Yeah, I know rock lobsters was a song way back. Was it? Okay. Rock spiders. They're the lowest of the low in the prison. So they're not that you want him to be beaten up or things like that. You might actually right now, but let's put that aside. But it's just like, forget suffering of future lives. Right. The suffering right now. This is why what I find really difficult is those that are caught and deny everything, because I just think you are just making it double, triple whammy. You're making it worse than worse.
Yeah. And as lessons and everything, but yeah, George tells me.
Slightly more, but anyway.
Right?
Yeah. Yes, I know. Yeah.
And all of those that were damaged by the way.
When I think, yeah,
You know, that's the concussion. And certainly extend to that in the past now, perhaps. But yeah, the compassion extends to those that were damaged in the past.
yes.
And unaffected. That seems to be quite secondary problem.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not.
By society.
Oh, by society?
I was talking about last week.
Yeah.
The environment and its habitat.
Yeah.
Overflow. So yeah, so the process. But people in the spotlight.
I know it seems we live in a very unjust situation in the world. Yeah.
And so yeah, so this practice and that practice of loving funds also working businesses.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. It's, that's what we do.
Yeah. One. Yeah. Yeah. Mostly. Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, regardless of, you know, the phrase hurt people, so that there is, yeah, some hurt there, but not everyone who was, you know, sexually abused as a child goes on to do that. So they've had other conditions that have enabled them to refrain from that, or you know, they've had other conditions. You know, from the stories that I read about that, they're very broken people, you know, generally incredibly broken by that. And so then we can see the extent of that damage. And then I think, well, this is what a mind not restrained, where it can go to, just like with wars and so forth. This is where like our unrestrained minds, particularly the human beings of this world, can create huge damage, isn't it? Huge damage, unbelievable damage. And this is where this training says we can overcome that in our own minds. We can't overcome it in someone else's, in our own minds. And then our minds won't go into those places. So we check now, is my mind going not into any negativity, anything that disturbs my mind, and what can I do to refrain from that? Because once it's out there in the action, it's like the mind has gone, basically. I mean, all the rational mind is gone. You know, just think of anger when that takes over our mind, or jealousy, or pride, anything that hijacks our mind. It's like all rational thinking goes out the window. You know, the ability to think about consequences of your actions. And then we can feel gratitude that we have the Buddhist teachings that talk about the consequences, not just in terms of this life, but in terms of future lives, all the more reason for restraint. Because there's no such thing as I'll get away with it in this life, which is, I think, somehow weirdly these people think they can get away with it. And maybe they have for many years, which just makes that negative karma multiply, accumulate more and more. And the habit of doing it more and more, the negative act, means that it's harder to break that. Yeah. So it's definitely, yeah, that's definitely a hard training. But it's good to raise it and contemplate how we can negotiate around that, with our own intentions. we can say our own intention is that they don't create any more harm. That feels comfortable to us, right? And so if that's as far as I can go for today, leave it at that. That's a step ahead. Right? Okay. Yeah, think just as I want happiness and do not want suffering, everyone else also wants happiness and does not want suffering. In this way, we are all exactly the same. So this is where we make our mind that mind of equanimity. We talk about immeasurable equanimity that regards all beings, and this comes directly to this point, not regarding them as the enemy or the one I can't possibly include in my affectionate love. Because on the basis of understanding that lifetime to lifetime, that enemy may have been my friend, may have been my mother, may have been my father, may have been, and of course, it all can get a bit too close for comfort again. I remember Venerable Robina saying one time about talking about this to a guy in prison. So it was a white guy. And I say that because of what she said. So when she was giving teachings about future lives and that we've all been each other's mother, brother, father, sister, everything, he says, you mean I can be reborn as a woman? Like he was shocked by the idea of that. And it makes you think. If you think about that, you could be reborn as the opposite gender, then you have to think, what would that experience be like? And then you have to have love, you have to have compassion, you have to want to have understanding. And she said, what I didn't tell him was he could have been reborn as a black woman. Right? So that would have been too much for his woman. But if we could think like that and think that we are intimately interconnected, then we're going to respond to others in a very different way. What was it? It does. I mean, yeah. And once, we have all these Buddhists take male form or Buddha form, but they're not actually either male or female. It's just like, okay, what's going to benefit people the most, So that's why they take those different forms. So it is, it all becomes, actually, it's more fluid than we thought. Yeah. So, and as the Dalai Lama says about we're all exactly the same as human beings, physically, mentally, emotionally, we're all the same. So the differences of language, of race, of culture, of beliefs, all of that's secondary. So suddenly you start to look at people as being all the same, physically, mentally, emotionally. Let's put their actions aside, that we've all got that same makeup. And so we want ourselves and others to be free of suffering. How good it would be if all those beings were freed from all their suffering. So in the four immeasurables, it says, may I myself will cause them to be free of suffering. So we take on the sense of responsibility to free others from suffering. And let's just do what we can. Don't start with the Bishop of Broome. Start too hard basket. I'll start with those around me. If I can, be more compassionate to those around me, including all the beings living in my garden and all the beings I encounter, then that's a pretty amazing place to start. And what we're not able to do, as it says in the Four Immeasurables, the long form, it says, please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. In other words, Buddha, I can't do this, help. Or Guru, Lama, Buddha, same. I can't do this by myself alone. Please help me. Like when I was at the, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, I was helping out with the happiness conference in, did I mention this? In San Francisco. I did, yeah. And everything went wrong. And I'm standing in front of the altar. Well, I had to sack this guy. I'm standing in front of the altar with Mahakala. So Mahakala is one of the Rothfull's powerful deities. And so I've got Mahakala at my back. And I'm going, okay, Mahakala, you have to come and help me. Because I'm not in the habit of sacking people. It's not something I've really had to do in my life. And I knew he had to go. It's just like, come on, Mahakala, you got to do it. I can't do it. And so that's this. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. So that enabled me to do it. I was sort of calling on a power greater than myself. And happened to work. I can still remember the day it was pouring with rain, etc. Anyway, that happened. So we do what we can. Yeah. Next one. Furthermore, take this opportunity to generate the mind of a bodhisattva that says, I will free them from all their sufferings. So again, that sense of universal responsibility. Now, I can't free all sentient beings from their sufferings. I don't know about anybody else here. I mean, Jesus Christ, look what Jesus Christ, Dalai Lama said, he's a great bodhisattva. He gave his life to take away the suffering of all beings. Did it work? No. But did he have a heart of great compassion? Absolutely. And again, and I don't want to unpack that situation for a long time. But that what we're doing is cultivating a mind that wishes to see all beings free from their suffering. So we're cultivating greater and greater compassion in our mind. And that way we do achieve the bodhicitta mind, that spontaneous arises whenever we see suffering to want to free beings. If we are able to do something in that situation, of course we do. Right now I might think, well, I do that already. Great. So using our problems in a way to train the mind in great compassion. So again, when we have difficulties, problems arise, thinking, okay, like my story of falling over and, in the kitchen, coming out of the bathroom, I should have made sure my feet were dry. I did not. I slipped and, my coccyx were excruciating back pain. Of course, I was immediately like, may anyone who's ever suffered back pain be free of it. And by the way, can you take it away from me right now? It was sort of like I had one mind and then I had another mind. It was really about me. So here we have the verse here again in the Guru Puja, the verse where it talks about Tonglen, this practice of taking on their suffering. We're visualizing that. We can't actually do it. We're visualizing we're taking on the suffering and giving them all our happiness, all our health, all our virtues, we say. But in fact, we're the one who's benefiting from that. It's a great sort of practice of compassion and generosity on our path, and wishing them to have happiness in its causes is a great love. So we benefit, we transform. Do they? Maybe not. Maybe it makes no difference. Although I do, place stock by the rabbi who said even people don't know they're being prayed for, they benefit. So they can only benefit then, not by the knowledge they're being prayed for, but by that energy, that positive energy going towards them. And I guess it's dependent on how much capacity we have of that energy. So with this verse, this is a verse when we do the puja, we repeat 3 times. And the reason, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is so that we don't just skip on ahead to the next verse without even thinking about it. So at least we recite it 3 times. It says, thus, perfect, pure, compassionate Guru I seek your blessings, again, seeking the guidance. Many times you think, what would the Dalai Lama do in this situation? What would Lama Zopa Rinpoche? What would my teacher do in this situation? I seek your blessings that all negative karmas, obscurations, and sufferings of Mother Transmigratory beings, so wherever they are in realms of existence, may, without exception, ripen on me right now. And just as we say, we can't actually take on their back pain, their cancers, their toothaches, can't actually we're not going to experience that for them, we can't. But we can have the compassion wishing them to be free of it. And that by giving my happiness and virtue to others, all transmigratory beings may experience happiness. So it's an aspiration, it's a wish. Another reason that we repeat 3 times, or as in my book here, Lama Zopa says, to pause at the end of the 3rd repetition for however long is needed to finish the meditation on Tonglen. So in this verse, for those who come along to Guru Puja, then the first repetition is we can think we're taking on the afflicted, disturbing states of mind of those beings. So maybe you could, if it's not too hard to include the bishop there, it might be too confronting. I don't want to take on those disturbing states. Anyway, whatever we can manage. So the afflictive obscurations, which is the obscurations to having a direct perceptual realization of emptiness, which means liberation, self-liberation. And then second time, taking on the knowledge or cognitive obscurations, which is the imprints or tendencies towards negativity in our mind that don't yet have the power to ripen, but they're still sitting there. They don't, they're being disempowered. And so they're called obscurations to enlightenment. And so we visualize taking on that. And the third one, we take on visualizing taking on all the contaminated aggregates, as we say, body, mind, and transforming that into the pure bodies of the deity. So here you have, the path to enlightenment. You have the motivation for self-liberation, then you have the great motivation of Mahayana, so and then Vajrayana, the tantric practice. So that it's like completion of the path that we're actually going through in that. Okay, so just leave it there for today. Any questions, comments before we finish? Okay, we can leave it there.
Sorry, what was the verse number?
95. It's the one that we do generally here twice in Tibetan and once in English, but we can do 3 in English, 3 in Tibetan, however. That was the verse. But of course, when we do it in Guru Puja here, we don't stop and say, hold on a minute, I haven't finished the meditation. Actually, when I was in San Francisco, I'm one of the nuns who's sadly since passed away. She passed away this year. But she said, hold on a minute, I haven't finished the meditation yet. But it was our morning practice. It was, so it wasn't the puja for the center. All right, so we'll stop there for today. Dedicate our prayers, all the merits that we have generated, all the virtue we've generated in our mind, so it doesn't get lost. Through page 16, through the merits of these virtuous, it's the 3rd verse down, through the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the precious body mind not yet born arise in glory. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Then page 19, long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. To the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Page 23, Long Life Prayer for Tenzin Osa. Lord of Dharma, who in accordance with the various dispositions of those to be subdued, makes clear in the light of your well-spoken advice the sacred Ganden tradition, essence of Buddhist teachings. O foremost and holy Lama, to you for us supreme. O Lama, please, please live long. And then this one, the prayer for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the first one, those following Dalai Lama. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious one, Shravakas and Pratyabhudas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings. Through their explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request, while striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Thank you very much. Tomorrow, 4 p.m, we have Tara Puja, which means Monday evening we have Guru Puja. Oh, Sunday afternoon, is it? I was thinking there was something on Sunday afternoon. Yes, we've skipped a Tibetan day. Okay. Sunday afternoon, 4 p.m. Guru Puja. Thank you.